Hello everyone! The Lunar New Year is coming up, and I actually didn't realize it until I was on YouTube and seeing all these rabbit mooncakes pop up, and I was thinking, rabbit mooncakes everywhere. I wonder if Lunar New Year is nearby. And I looked, and yes, it is the 22nd of year 2023, and it will be the year of the rabbit, hence all those rabbit mooncakes all over the place. So I decided that since I have rabbit mooncake molds, I will make some pink and green rabbit mooncakes with matcha tea powder and beet juice powder. And the recipe I am using is one posted by Magic Ingredients. I recommend that you go to watch her video to understand more of how to make this. Mine's is basically the same thing without lye water. Okay, the changes I made is no lye water. I just used normal water instead, and I added a teaspoon of matcha tea powder for the green rabbits, and then 1 teaspoon of beet juice powder for the pink rabbits. And also, instead of invert syrup or honey, I used agave syrup because that's what I have on hand. I actually do have honey, but I was running low and I happened to have agave syrup. So it's like, okay, it's a liquid sweetener. And here I am mixing the powder with the sweetener and oil mix first, so it will incorporate more before I add in the flour. Because I noticed that if I add in either matcha powder or beet juice powder directly into dry ingredients before mixing it with a liquid, it won't mix as fully into the dough. And I've done this with like udon noodle dough and other things like that. So here I am adding the flour, making sure that it's the right mass. And I will have the recipe for Magic Ingredients linked so that you guys can go watch her original video, because it is her recipe and I didn't modify it enough for me to post it. I mean, if I modify recipes a lot, then I'll post them, but if they're mostly original to the creator, I prefer to post their link. Also, make sure that you do add 2 to 3 teaspoons of water if you don't use lye water, because you need it to incorporate the dough and get the gluten to start becoming more elastic. Without water, it won't stick together very well, because I have made this without water at all, without lye water, without any plain water, and it was not sticking the right way. And at first I was confused and I was wondering, why is it not working? And then I added water and it worked better. In general, when making doughs, especially like a pie crust dough, I notice if I add water, it will become more pliable, but it will also bake differently. Now this is mooncake skin, not pie skin, so having water is good. With pie crust or shortbread, or not shortbread, just pie crust, it would make it kind of a strange texture, not like the pie crust I originally wanted to, but this is mooncake. And so right now I am going to go ahead and I think I'm making the second batch here. Yeah, I made 2 batches back to back. I did not make one batch and split it in half because I wasn't sure if the color would be as even if I did 2 batches if I just added the powder last, because I have done that before and the color doesn't come out even. So I made the 2 batches separately and it was easy enough, so I just thought, why not just do 2 batches? And then I will have lots of mooncake. And making lots of mooncake works because these actually keep for quite a long time, several days. I think I've kept them out for a week before at room temperature. And it's really cold right now. It's like 60 to 65, well, more like 65 degrees Fahrenheit where I am. And sometimes it goes a bit lower. And it probably is lower because the thermostat is upstairs and that would be 65. And sometimes it goes down to 64, 62, and then downstairs is where everything is. And, oh, also, a side note, I have guppies and Neocaridina shrimp, which are both considered tropical, well, the I don't know if the shrimp are tropical, the guppies are considered tropical fish, but they survive fine without the heater on. Some people are worried and have heaters in their fish tanks, and I'm just thinking, well, the temperature at my place goes down to like 62 and the guppies are surviving it. They will stop breeding at the low temperature, but they won't like all of a sudden die off on you. So people don't have to be worried about paying for water heaters for aquariums if your living place or wherever the aquariums are goes down to like 65 or 62. And before deciding on what to record for Lunar New Year's, I wrote down this list of things, a lot of stuff. It ranged from resin charms to polymer clay figurines, maybe stuck onto earrings, or like little shakers and stuff, and then even rabbit dolls. And I ended up going with the simplest ideas because I had already been planning on what to create. I had been planning videography for several months. I actually have like 3 months of videography somewhat planned out, and this was kind of last minute for me. So I thought I want to have at least 2 or 3 items to upload. At first I was thinking of 4 items. I had 2 baked goods and 2 craft items, but I simplified it down to just 2 baked goods, which was these rabbit mooncakes, and then you will see the second item later that I actually filmed on the same day, and then rabbit knit dolls, like crochet or amigurumi. I don't know if they would be amigurumi because usually the crochet dolls are called amigurumi. Amu is to knit. Anyways, I have a knitting machine, and that's why I decided on the rabbit knit dolls, because then I could just use the knitting machine and that would make it faster. And here's my filling. I decided to mix a bunch of random nuts with the red bean paste. You see how I have a bag of black sesame seed? I had originally planned on making the filling with black sesame because I was like, oh, the red bean is kind of a dark color, I'll mix the black sesame in, and I really like black sesame. But then last minute I thought, oh, I want pumpkin seeds in here because I just happen to have a lot of pumpkin seeds. And I thought, oh wait, pumpkin seeds and walnuts is going to lighten the color of the dough. I might as well use regular sesame seeds, which I have an excessive amount of. So I'm putting half a cup of sesame seeds, half a cup of pumpkin seeds, half a cup of walnuts, and mixing it into the, did I put 3/4 cup of sesame? I'm not sure. Okay. And then mixing it with the food processor before I add in the red bean paste. And what I did to measure how much was I looked at the total mass of filling that Magic Ingredients had. She said she made 10 fillings of 55 grams each, which would be 550, and I'm making 2 batches, so I would need at least 1,100 grams of filling. So mine's ended up being, I weighed it, so it was around 550 for the dried nuts and stuff, and I put around 500 to 550 red bean paste, and I had just enough red bean paste. I ended up using up all the red beans that I had made, which was, or azuki bean paste. I call it red bean paste, but I think it's more accurate to call it azuki bean paste, because if you just use any red beans, it will not taste the same. I know someone who used random red beans from the supermarket. She did not like the flavor. I have not tried that. I always buy azuki red beans to make this paste because I don't want to mess up a batch of and end up with random sweet beans that I don't want to eat. So this is actually 1 cup of dried red beans, or azuki beans, that I boiled into a paste. And I used it the whole entire thing. And had just enough to have around 1,100 or 1,200 grams of filling. And it actually was too moist. The problem with it being moist is that it will be harder to wrap the wrapper around because it's too squishy, it's not firm. If you have a more firm filling, it's easier to wrap the wrappers around, especially if you're going to wrap it tight and shape it in a mooncake mold. Now, you see me scooping out 55 grams. This was so liquid that the 55 grams was too wobbly and it was not fitting well in the wrapper. Plus my wrapper was not as soft. I didn't set it out for long enough for the dough to become softer. The thing with wheat flour dough is that the longer you let it sit, the softer it will become. One time I was making dumplings and I left the dough out for like 4 hours by accident or something. It became super soft and pliable. I was amazed. I was shocked actually. The only time I'd ever seen dough that pliable was when I had actually made a yeast bread, and actually I was making sourdough pot stickers, and so the dough had been out for 2 days sitting for 2 days because it was sourdough. For this one, because my dough was so liquidy, I ended up for my second, so this is 55 grams. You don't see me scooping out all of it, but I scooped out half of it, and for the second half, which was the next 11 scoops of filling, I ended up using 45 grams. 45 grams sort of fit. The wrappers still didn't wrap around very well, and you'll see later on when I put them into the mold, they leak out, and then I have these split mooncakes with like rabbit guts pouring out, rabbit filling. It's like, oh wow, those rabbits are hurt. Their arms are scarred, and their filling is like gushing out of their body. Not gushing out. When the whole thing bakes, it's shaped into a mold and it's baked properly. Plus my filling had, I had dates. I had 15 dates in there because I didn't want to add too much sugar. The red bean paste itself, which was 1 cup of dry azuki beans, had half a cup of coconut sugar, and for the filling, the nut stuff, I just added 15 dates. And here you'll see me measuring out the dough for the wrapper. I went according to what ingredients had used for her wrapper dough, which was 25 grams. So I measured about 25 to 26 grams of dough for each mooncake wrapper, and she had, I think, 10 or 11 or something, and I had 11. So I ended up with 22 mooncakes total. I know I wrote down 25 grams. I wonder if I missed out on something, but I had 11 of them. And we'll just go look at her recipe. You'll see the full details of how she made them, and hers turned out perfectly. Mine's weren't perfect looking. And so you'll see me roll out 11 of these green balls. They're kind of a light green color and not very dark green. I'm thinking of maybe making them more green next time. Maybe adding more matcha powder. And I don't want to add like spinach powder or spirulina powder, which I do have. Spirulina powder will make them very green, but that also makes them taste like spirulina seaweed flavor. And I have made green udon noodles. They taste nice. Turmeric powder udon noodles actually taste really nice. If you ever want to try making yellow noodles or yellow udon noodles, they taste pretty good. And so do mushroom powder udon noodles. I happen to have mushroom powder because I have all these powders because I went through this phase where I bought all sorts of supplements online because I was sick and the doctors couldn't help me, so I just bought all sorts of health supplements that are supposed to help you and made these crazy health smoothies. I got better after 2 to 3 years. Like, when you cure yourself naturally, it takes time. It's not instant like with pharmaceutical medication. But to me, the side effects of that were positive. Because I just ate a bunch of random healthy stuff. And it does require research. You don't randomly buy stuff and eat it. You should do research because everyone's body is different. Everyone has food sensitivities. I know people with all sorts of weird allergies, and if they eat the wrong thing, they can get pretty messed up. And I know that I can eat this stuff. So I'm making delicious mooncakes that are edible for me and that my body will be happy with eating. Here's the pink one. Beet. And a thing about beet juice powder, if you put it in, it does, well, in mooncakes it's fine, in dough it's fine, but it naturally has a slightly bitter flavor. So one time I put it in oatmeal and I let my daughter try because I was like, oh look, it's pink oatmeal, and she was a little kid and she thought it looked pretty, and then she ate it and was like, oh my gosh, why is it bitter? And I was surprised. I did not taste it at first. I was like, oh wow, I just pranked my daughter with cute pink oatmeal that's actually bitter because the beet juice powder is kind of bitter. I was surprised because I had actually put that in chocolate to flavor chocolate. I have flavored white chocolate with beet juice powder. I will mix cacao butter with a little bit of beet juice powder and some sugar and maybe extra, well, it was cacao butter with the beet juice powder, maybe some extra coconut milk powder just to make it drier, and then also a solid sugar sweetener. If you're using cacao butter, or for making chocolates, you want to use a solid sweetener so that it solidifies better at room temperature, unless you plan on serving the chocolate frozen. I've actually tried this. When I tried random online recipes, I tried one that used coconut butter and cacao powder. That only solidifies if you put it in the refrigerator, or if the room temperature where you're at is really low. Otherwise, it becomes this really soft, gelatinous thing. And I made peanut butter cups with it that tasted nice, but if I took them out of the fridge and left them out at room temperature, they became jello chocolate softy cups that kind of melted too easily. Also, a side note on why I made 2 batches of mooncake, even though it's very few people eating these, is that other than the fact that they can last a long time at room temperature, the ingredients are pretty healthy. Lots of nuts and seeds and azuki paste with a little bit of dough wrapper. So these are a nice healthy snack. Well, I consider it a nice healthy snack, or a really quick, like on the go meal, semi meal item, like first really small, well, okay, a snack meal, like sometimes maybe before we leave in the morning, or if I'm just a little bit hungry and I need to get a bunch of stuff done, I can just eat a mooncake and then get going with everything else. Here I am filling them in the and putting them in the mooncake mold. I realized after filming it that I didn't have the camera angle situated properly, so when you see me stuffing the filling or putting it in the mooncake mold, it's not really in view. You'll see that later on. And also, oh, another modification that I did with the mooncakes was that I did not put an egg wash on it, and that changed my bake time, because traditionally there's, for the dough wrapper mooncakes and not the snow skin ones, I have yet to make the snow skin mooncake. I will eventually make it sometime. I just didn't make it this time because I didn't want to have leftovers, and I didn't know how the mochi would last or how it would be. But anyways, so for these, there's normally egg wash, so people bake it at a certain temperature for 5 minutes, put more egg wash, 5 more minutes, egg wash, 5 more minutes, egg wash, 5 more minutes. And I didn't want egg wash. I actually like the matte look, and plus I like how the color looks when it's baked this way and it doesn't have this shiny egg wash on it. So I actually baked mine at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes. And I recommend 15 to 20, and that you watch the mooncakes in the oven a little bit for the last 5 minutes just to make sure they don't burn or anything. Mine's turned out perfectly. The bottom was nice and just a little golden brown, and the top was there was a little bit of browning on the top, and then the bottom was fully cooked. And since the filling was like popping out of the dough. You can see the rabbits look like they're scarred and injured. I made a bunch of injured rabbits. Some look non-injured, but a lot of them look pretty injured. What kind of mooncakes do you guys like to make? Do you guys make mooncakes? And do you have mooncake molds and stuff? And what kind of fillings are you interested in? I'm wondering what other people make for Lunar New Year's, if they are making stuff for Lunar New Year's and stuff. Oh, here are the pink, and also for my pink rabbits, they turned out a little better because I had made smaller batches of filling. This is when I switched over from 55 to 45 grams for the filling, and it fit a little better. The rabbits still ended up somewhat looking a little scarred, but not as many or as badly scarred.